Hey everybody, it's Graveyard Ghosts. Now as you can see, there's a cemetery in front of us that we're going to be exploring today. And it is called the Pellman Cemetery. Today, I am taking us on a journey in the Great Smoky Mountains. On the less traveled part, down in the Greenbrier area. Now that is close to the Little Pigeon River. We are about 3.5 miles off of the main road. And then we are on Ramsey Road. The cemetery is hidden. Not a lot of people know about it. So it is one of the older ones, and it is one of the largest ones too, if not the largest in the Smoky Mountains. In this particular cemetery, there are over 700 people buried. A lot of the tombstones are primitive. A lot of them are hand marked. I'll see if I can find some examples for you. Sometimes they even run out of room. If we're lucky, I'll be able to show you one of those. So let's go ahead and take our journey inside the cemetery. Let's go. Now this cemetery, as I said, is called the Palmen Cemetery. It actually got its name from the priest at the church. His name was Pellman. He actually bought the land to put the cemetery on. Thus, it was named after him. Some people believe that this property once housed 2 cemeteries and then they were combined. So again, that's what some believe. So not sure if that is true or not, but of course quite possible. We'll go on in. You'll find, as I always say, a lot of stone markers within the cemetery itself. Here, our first one died in 1901, born in 1846. So again, another very old cemetery. Now here we have an example of one of the markers where they have hand carved the name, born or died in 1875, as you can see. Now here we have an example of what was a stone marker, and then relatives of latter years put an actual stone in front with the birth and the death of that particular person. Again, some stone markers over here. A couple of unique ones over here for the day. Very unique. Died 1894. Died 1888. Some hand inscribing at the bottom. Rest in peace till the day breaks and the shadows. Notice they ran out of room. Let me get you closer to this. Shadows, they have SAD and then OWS. And then it looks like fly away. You have to remember also, some words may be misspelled on some of the stones out here because they just didn't have the education. So though they tried their best, it may not be perfectly spelled. Again, stone markers everywhere you look. Might be a headstone, might be a footstone. I'll tell you an interesting story about this cemetery. Now, I'm not for sure which marker it is because I do not know the name of the deceased, but I will tell you the story. Now, there was a lady in the woods who liked to sit out on her porch every day and rock and read her Bible. Now, one day, some of the neighbor folk walked by her cabin and saw her sitting on her porch, and they did wave. But the odd thing was, well, odd to them because she was a very friendly lady, and like, as you know, some of our neighbors, where some of the places we've lived, may not wave at all or even acknowledge you when you walk by. But that was not the case with this lady. She didn't wave back. Just sat there with her Bible open. Well, the neighbor folk thought there's something odd about this. So they went up on the porch. Poor lady had passed away. They didn't know what to do with her, so they took her inside the cabin. Unfortunately, she had been dead so long, Rigor Mortis had sat in. Couldn't move her. So there she is, sitting in her rocker, with her hand holding her Bible, still like she's reading it. They knew they had to get her buried. They thought and thought and thought. Well, what they finally ended up doing is they did bury her, but they had to bury her sitting upright in her rocker, just the way she died, holding her Bible. So that was how she ended. So there she is, buried, sitting in her rocker, still reading her Bible. Now that particular grave, as I said, is somewhere within this graveyard. Again, not known exactly where, but if she hears us, we bid hello to her and rest in peace. Now over here's a marker I'm going to show you. These you don't see too often, so they're interesting when you can find them. Actually, it's another hand-carved stone, and if you notice, they have drawn lines similar to like we do when we're children, to make sure everything looks as neat as it can. And it looks like they had room to get everything written, except at the end the leaves are covering up, but they had to put the date of the death on a line by itself. Here's another one right next to it, handwritten. Notice they didn't draw lines, so it's kind of all over the place. Some of it's faded away, but still very unique, and what a memory to make for somebody. This particular stone is standing up, but some kind person has put another stone there, which I don't know if that's two different people and they just placed it there, or if they actually did use that to prop it up. Now over here, quite an unusual way to display the flowers, but they have them all up and down in front of the grave marker. And over here, we have the same thing. Buried the flowers up and down in a straight row. Because as many of us know, most commonly they would all be up here around the stone itself. Not uncommon again, stones placed up against a tree. A lot of times they do that just for the simple reason so the tombstones don't get lost forever and buried in the ground with the rain and the dirt covering them and seeping and seeping and seeping into the ground area. I'm going to take us up this way and we'll take a little look around over here. As we leave, I'll take a little journey down the path because I want to show you some old remnants of one of the buildings that used to be here. It's kind of an interesting artifact back here. And you know, up yonder, you can barely see it. The same situation. The flowers are all placed in a row. It may not be new to you, but that's something new to me in my journeys to see is the flowers. So I'll have to research that. It may have a special meaning. Here we just have very, very thin slabs of rock all throughout this particular area. Again, a nice view. All of the bodies that were buried here, again, over 700. Find this cemetery as their final resting place. Now here's one buried right up against a tree. It's also hand carved. Born July 16th with no date, but died in, looks like 89. Lots of various markers again. This looks like a headstone with a footstone. Again, hand carved. An old tree. Lots of trees in this cemetery. Looks like that's about the perimeter of it. Let's see what this one is. Oh, that one. He's lots of letters, unreadable from the weathering. Ah, hazel. That's what the haze was. Very unique. That was the only old hand-carved one. And then in front, relatives have placed a newer marker way back when for Hazel Whaley's acknowledgement. Whaley is another popular name within the Smoky area, another name that goes way far back. Here's a unique stone. Oh, and very unique because it has hands carved. Again, it is hand carved. Born 1852, died 1912. Thou to memory dear. That's about all I can make out of it. Let's see what this one is. Lots of interesting features out here. Now here we have two old stone markers. And that is their old ones. This one you can't read, but this one you can. It does say Hulda. The new marker, Hulda. The children and the husband. Now, what's unusual about this also is the stone marker that's hand carved, obviously from weathering and age. You can't read anything except make out part of the name. The other one's totally unreadable. Therefore, for the death dates, They just have died after 1900. And for Isaac, the same. Died after 1900 because they don't know the exact death date. And then it lists their children. The children probably all got together and put that in for the parents. Very, very unusual. Here's another Whaley with a newer marker. The old stone marker is no longer here, it looks like. Again, Whaleys are still in the area and therefore have descendants and relatives that can come out. You see this commonly also in some of these older cemeteries. An old stone broken in the back. And then in the front, I'll show you the back part first. This stone has been broken off, hopefully by weather and not by vandalism. This is the front part of it. So they have propped it up in front of the other one to keep the remembrance there. Again, this one is hand carved. Unfortunately, you can't read it, but it looks like the death was around 1809, 1909, probably 1889, I would say, with most of the other dates. This one, they carved a little star. In front, unreadable. Now this one, this might be a headstone and a footstone. Again, hand carved. Not forgotten. Born in 1881. Here is a hand carved one, another Whaley. A newer one. I won't remove the leaves simply because of cemetery etiquette, but this one did serve in the Civil War. Another Whaley. Again, a hand-carved stone marker. Unfortunately unreadable. Does have a star on it also. And then in front, the new marker that was placed. Walking by, the same thing. Unreadable. This one was Marianne Ogle Whaley. Maiden and married name. Ogle's another widely known name in the Smoky Mountain region. This tree is a little bit unusual because the grave is right there at the tree. Whether it's been moved or if that's where it originally was. The tree was probably nothing back when they were buried. Here's another marker that someone has placed against the tree. Like I said, that's a common thing to do when they fall over or if it's unknown where it came from. Now I'm going to take us on a little journey to get to the other area where the pillars were. Now, where the pillars are, there's several of them, and they do go on for a little ways. two theories on what it used to be. I'm kind of surprised nobody actually knows that I've ever researched historically and found. But most people, what it is they either think that is where a school used to be, or they think that that is where a church used to be. Well, since there was a church back here, and not knowing where the remnants, if any of it, are, my thoughts on it always were that that was probably where the church was. And that was probably where Pellman, who the cemetery we just saw was named after, was where he preached. Now, this particular area of the Smokies, as I said, is less known and less traveled. But if you're ever in the area, it's a great place to go. Also, on one of my other videos, the one that goes back to the homestead and also the little cemetery that's on the Porter's Creek Trail, I have to tell you, there's another very short video that I did, and there actually evidently was a witch back there at some point within the last week, because he or she had done a ritual and left the remnants on a boulder rock in front of what I call the little smokehouse that's in front of the barn where the settlement is. Now, when I checked with the Voodoo Queen in New Orleans, she told me that it wasn't voodoo, and that it looked like a witch, and that it was some kind of ceremony to be rid of a spirit. Now, in the little video, as I'll explain to you now, there was a candle that was burnt, a little pouch that had a symbol drawn on it. There also were some thumbtacks, as well as some type of a bone that was burnt. And the wax dribbled all over the boulder stone. So that was a very interesting thing to find on that particular trail, because you have to walk back, I would say, approximately 2.5 or 3 miles to get to the homestead. And why that particular location was of interest, not for sure. I know I have seen outside of the barn area before some movements that look like orbs when filming. I don't know if the place has many hauntings. I do know that it used to be used as a camp. And then there also used to be other structures back there, as people did also live back there. Now, this particular trail, if you take the Greenbrier Smoky Mountain entrance, just right there at the Little Pigeon River, follow down just over 3 miles, go past a picnic area, and then you will notice a bridge. Go over the bridge, Then immediately there's a second bridge. Go over it. Then almost immediately after that, you'll see a chain link with a little do not enter symbol. Park there. Walk back. That's the trail, but walk back not quite half a mile. And that's where you'll see the pillars and what used to be some kind of structure. And then just keep walking past that. The trail will narrow, but you can make it out even with the leaves, as you can see. I'm having no problem finding my way out of the woods here. And just keep walking. It's a dead end, and that's where the cemetery is. And just a little further. And the remnants, I can start to see them up ahead. I'll come back in the springtime too, and that way you can get a better look when we don't have all the leaves covering. But they almost look like tombstones when you first get up here. But look in front of me. Those are actually blocks. There's some over here behind these trees. One up here. It's an example of one. The others are over there. It's hard to see with all the brush, but they do go back about as far as where that, I was going to say yellow, but there's so much yellow. I don't know if you'll know which one that I am mentally pointing my mind at for you to see. A couple more pillars in the woods, and they do extend quite a ways back. Again, that's why I thought this might be the church. Now here you have them all in a single row. Again, they look like large tombstones. When I first took this trail, I first thought, is that the cemetery? No, can't be. Too many pillars. Though it does look like one, doesn't it? It looks like you're walking through a large stone cemetery here. But this is the pillars. Now they're all basically pillars, except this one here. It's like made of stone and other material. It's not really a chimney. You see? Pillars all over the place. Pillars, 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 pillars. Now interesting over here, this particular one is a corner pillar. So the building would have cornered here, continued here, went up to those, and then another section built to the side, as you can see, continued on outward. Again, the structure was probably made of logs, so whether it burnt or what, that may be why there's no remnants. Here's one of the pillars that has fell over and the moss has grown on it. More pillars. Very interesting, I think. Makes your mind kind of visualize all the things that might have been here and what really was here. Well, everyone, that was the Palmen Cemetery and the remnants of either a church or a school. We'll say a church. Again, this was Graveyard Ghosts. I hope you've enjoyed our journey today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.